Our agenda this evening will be 7 o'clock citizens input, Eagle Scouts Christopher Johns and Max Guy, 7:05 Kevin Pecos and Sergeant Richard Noonan, the approval of the 2011 to 2012 police contract. 7:45 we will go into executive session to speak about contract negotiations, strategy for real property negotiations, and review of executive session minutes. And we will do action items at some point in between. So the time out. So if you could all stand for the pledge. Larry?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks. And now, the time being 7 o'clock, if Chris and Max want to come up.
Citizens input?
Is it, yeah.
Oh.
Well, isn't...
Oh, this is under it. Okay.
Part of
Right.
citizens input.
Have a seat, gentlemen.
And just your name and address for the record.
My name's Max Guy, and I live at 10 Maple Place.
Chris Johns, I live at 20 West Street.
Well, guys, congratulations.
Thank you.
They're in order. And if you just want to tell us a little bit about what you've done to get to this point in your scouting.
Okay. Well, like,
What's your latest project that you did, Max?
like the Eagle Project?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So for my Eagle Project, I built a footbridge on Greeley Pond off of East Street to allow easier access to the property because it was flooded and there were roots. So I organized a group of 30 scouts to go and build like a 30 to 40 foot bridge.
Nice. Great. That's great leadership.
Thanks.
Tough work. Thanks, Max. And Chris?
My project was building 3 new benches and then repainting all the benches on the common. So I organized like a few different weekends to get scouts up there repainting and rebuilding benches.
Great work. Well, the community thanks you. And again, congratulations on your award. And you guys can encourage others to do the same.
Definitely.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thanks a
coming
lot,
by.
guys. Appreciate it.
We just wanted to give the people at home an opportunity to hear about Eagle Scouts and the kinds of things that you do. So we appreciate you coming tonight and sharing that aspect with the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. And I actually went to an Eagle Scout ceremony back in May in Foxborough, and it was a tremendous ceremony. And what impressed me was, leading up to it, a description of all the people in recent history and in current history that have been Eagle Scouts and have gone on to do tremendous things, all the way through astronauts and government and sports people. And from what I've been reading about the both of you guys, it's very impressive, and no doubt you guys are going to go on and do some great things.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks. We're very proud of you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
And anyone else for citizens input? Yep. Just step right up there, Dick, so that we...
I think the scouting people do a great job. I'm still working on my first badge. And the preparation I had for this meeting tonight constitutes that first badge, I hope. Well, let me just go over a couple of items, if I may. I'll be as brief as I can. Agendas. We had some discussion at the January meeting on the annual report relative to the agenda question, how we arrive at it, how we don't arrive at it. The agendas year in and year out have been getting briefer and briefer. There are fewer items on them. We no longer have old business, new business. There are 3 agendas posted that have new items or old business, new business on them. Most of them don't. They're very brief in terms of what they want to cover. It's as if Governmental agencies just don't want to talk about anything unless it's something they absolutely have to get at on a given evening. It bothers me that one has to only talk at a citizen's input and not under old business. Example, the annual report was first brought up before Thanksgiving. We had the meeting in January. It's still not on the agenda for any action or inaction or update. The annual report is scheduled to be published next month or so. Is it just going to be the same? Are we skipping over this year? What is the update? Shouldn't this be an item for review weekly or bi-weekly as you meet as we go through it? The budget has had two good presentations, the one in November and the one 2 weeks ago. It's been in the public. They've been talking about it. We've been talking about it at the senior center. Shouldn't there be an update? Shouldn't there be a possible conversation with the public and the taxpayer on this kind of item? I think we're missing something, and something very important, and we should think about it and see how we deal with these things again. When I sat on committees, we always had old business, new business, because these were things which were constantly propelling themselves to their final act. When they got to the final act, the vote took place, and what have you. The last meeting on the budget, it ended with Kevin saying that we couldn't eliminate raises as these step increases are contained in their contracts. I have to wonder seriously how the chief executive of the nation is able to talk to GM unions and Ford unions, how the New Jersey governor can talk to his, what happened in that town in Rhode Island with the teachers last year, what's happening around the country today. I never used the word eliminate. Even the press quoted me as saying, freeze their steps. I was not asking to eliminate the steps, freeze them. And I think we need to keep this in mind as we approach the contracts. The issue is more than the COLA. We've gone round and round on the COLA. It's a cost of living adjustment. It is not an increase. It is not a raise. It should never be included as a raise. Our contracts, and we'll be getting into the police contract shortly, and we can discuss it at that time. The COLA should be set by the Federal Labor Statistics Board on an annual basis, and the unions should be made to accept it in the bargaining atmosphere. It's an adjustment. It's not a raise. And the sooner we understand this, the better off we will be. The problem is the budget presentation on page 5 states, quote, I issued budget guidelines, end of quote, and the result was a directive to receive 1 3% COLA and 1 COLA freeze, end of quote. Directive by whom? You?
Is that a question for me?
I'm asking you because you said it.
My understanding is that's the Board of Selectmen's parameter, which was repeated by myself.
Is there a vote on this? Is there a record on this in the minutes?
If there were, Madam Chairman, it would be an executive session. It would not be something that could be discussed publicly, because that would be strategy with respect to labor negotiations. It would be very injurious to the town's negotiating position if we were to discuss that in public with contract negotiations ongoing right now.
Okay, well, basically, what I'm hearing is it was a Board of Selectmen decision to give us 0 and 3 in whichever order it was, and you were just conveying the message.
That's my understanding.
Okay. Page 6 notes the town currently employs approximately 700. And a quote, it's interesting to note that the state's unemployment number is just under 700 for this town. We have an equal number of unemployed as we do public employees. We have also large numbers of underemployed shorter work week, shorter hours. We have those that have gone beyond the 99 weeks. Yet, the neighbors have to put up the money to pay the COLAs and the raises and the steps and the longevity. And I think this is totally unfair, and we should recognize it as such. Page 7. Quote, annual requests to fund overtime or other accounts will not be made, end of quote. I hope that this is true, that there'll be no excess beyond what the numbers that have been given to the advisory committee. It's never been done before. If he does it, I'll be the first to come up and shake your hand, believe me. And I don't do that very often.
That will be a laudable goal for me, Dick.
Well, I then have to turn around and look at the impending warrant that's out for the special town meeting. Article 1 and 2. Article 1 is to increase by $20,000 the monies expended on the parking lot. I've looked through past annual reports. You know my feeling on the annual reports. There are problems. There's no record I can find of any vote on that parking lot. Yet we're being asked to transfer money into the highway expense account of $20,000 to pay for the excess work over there. There were 5 cars there today. At $2 a head, it'll be 8 years before we pay off this $20,000 at this rate. You know, who developed the plan and suggested that we have a huge parking lot over there and that the people would buy into it with the walk they have to make? You know, if this was private industry, he'd be on the unemployment line now. My question is, where is it in the documentation that we voted to do this work? Article 2 is even more interesting. You want us to appropriate $1,071 to make up for 3 detail vendor operations that haven't paid their bill. Do you know what we make on details? We mark up every detail bill by 10%. We get $2 million in detail payouts to the employees. We make $200,000. Why do we need to transfer $1,071? We have $200,000 in that account. Those 2 articles should be dropped. They should be forgotten forever. Your agenda notes approval of police contract. Do you have a copy for the taxpayer to read? Do you?
For the
Sure.
the contract?
Sure.
You have a copy. Where is it?
I'll be happy to grab it. We were actually doing an announcement at 7:05 tonight of the terms of the deal, so
Well,
it's on the agenda later.
don't you believe the public have a right to see what the changes are before you make a decision?
No, absolutely not. Unfortunately, Dick, collective bargaining law in Massachusetts is established, Chapter 150E specifically says that the chief executive, in this case the Board of Selectmen for the town, and the bargaining team and then the full union ratify the terms of the contract, and that is their exclusive right. The contract, once approved by the 2 parties, is then submitted to town meeting strictly for purposes of funding. No other issues can be debated by town meeting. If the town meeting decides against funding the terms of the contract, then the parties return to the table and renegotiate. But the town meeting does not approve the contract, only the funding for it. That's the law.
It's very interesting. Most interesting. What is it, 27 states now are questioning that issue. We could be questioning it too, and we could have a petition to have it on the warrant for town meeting and let the legislature overturn it. I'll be happy to put that petition out as well. It seems inconceivable that the taxpayer who has to make up the money has no say whatsoever in such an agreement, and that you as a board would not insist that the public have the information on that before you even look at the damn thing.
Well, remember again, the taxpayers do make the ultimate decision on the funding of the contract, which of course is the important issue, but they only have an up or down vote, and that's the way the law is written in Massachusetts.
You know as well as I do that the funding is dependent on the terms in the contract. And I'll get to them in a moment, besides the fact that we can discuss it on the agenda item. My suggestion would be get that information out to the public, move to table until your next meeting, and then approve it or do what you want with it. But I think it's important to get this stuff out in the public sector. It's never been out there. You recall when I asked at town meeting how many have read contracts? One hand went up, except for the union members. One person out of the 400 odd that were up there had read a contract. They should read these contracts. They're beautiful, believe me. Your intent to use the job-saving grant of $543,000 by splitting it between yourselves and the schools. This is very interesting, too. We stepped up to the line and met the level spending agreement that everyone had made around your table and the advisory committee to put up that funding. So a check comes back. Oh, it's schools. Oh, it's town halls. It's the taxpayers' reimbursement. I'd like to know where that money is in the school budget, what it's eaten up, because in my estimation, they're short not only $500,000, it's the $400,000 they've used this $543,000 to apply to. There's a question there of ethics and morality, and I think it stinks. Let me suggest, all of us know we're spending 70% on education today. We've stepped up to the bar every time. 1990, their budget was 50%. In the year 2000, it was almost 60%. We have increased their budget each decade. And there's no reason to get into this kind of nitty-gritty and penny ante kind of negotiations. There are three summaries, I think, that are critical for town meeting. Yep. Randy needs to produce. He isn't here. I don't know why. But these are important. The first is a department-by-department accounting in the three-digit format of the warrant for the total step increase, the cost of the longevity increase, and the COLA increase in total dollars over the prior year. Unfortunately, just putting the raises in and the COLAs does not pick up the big cost of the overtime factor built in. That's on top of this. But I think we need these numbers. And incidentally, it is very interesting to note the only numbers that were presented in this fashion to advisory committee is the school department that had the full numbers for the OT and the steps, and Randy's finance department. Randy, I would expect it from. We got it. But no other department in town has those numbers together in any format whatsoever. In any format.
Actually, Dick, for the general government, I can't speak for the school, obviously, but for the general government, each department budget has a personal personal wages and salary worksheet, and the step increase for each individual employee is clearly identified, as is the longevity. There are columns in the worksheet with the employee's name, and you read across base pay, longevity, step increase. The COLA is not, and that's because of collective bargaining. We don't want to reveal what we're setting aside for COLA because we'll transmit what we've got available and it undermines our bargaining position. But longevity and step increase is clearly indicated in the town budget.
It is not. It is not. In comparison to the prior year, it is not. I can show it to you. I've gone through the advisory document. There are only two. Look, what is in there is for fiscal 12. They tell you, man by man, the base rate, the ups, the stipends, the longevity, and all this, for that fiscal year only. There's no comparable document for the prior fiscal year. What are we increasing? There's no increase noted, except for those two isolated departments, school and finance. If you want, I'll be in tomorrow. I'll go through the document with you. It is not there.
All a person would need to do is take the fiscal 11 budget and the fiscal 12 budget, put them side by side for any given department.
Where does one get fiscal 11?
I have a copy. I assume that they're in the library. I don't know. I wasn't here last year, Dick.
I know. But I'm saying for the average taxpayer, I've asked Randy for some stuff lately. He said it'll take 2 months to get it.
Well,
Town meeting is less than 2
extracting.
months. Let me finish this presentation.
Well, let me just answer your question, because I think it's important not to say something on the camera without, and have that go out to the public without an understanding. Extracting that information from a budget that's 3 or 4 inches thick is an enormous amount of work. If
Are
the
you
Board
on a
of
computer?
if the Board of Selectmen directs me to do that work, we'll do it. But I can't do it for every individual citizen of it's a community of 17,000 citizens. If I were to begin analyzing the budget and extracting data for each individual citizen, as you're requesting, Dick, this office would do nothing but respond to individual citizen requests for data. What I'd be happy to give you is the fiscal 11 budget, the fiscal 12 budget you already have, and you can put side by side the personnel wages worksheet for the police and the personnel wages worksheet for the police for FY12, and you can scan across each person's name and you can see what raise they got. But for us to do that for 200 employees would take an extraordinary amount of time, and I'm responding to one citizen. It would probably take the staff, I'm going to guess, 10, 15 hours to do that, and that's not, I can't do it. I would love to be able to do it, but it's just physically impossible for us to respond in that manner. I'm sorry.
Let me suggest a salvation for you. Each department put their numbers together last year, and the year before, and the year before that. A simple directive to them to put that number together on the increase of the total step between these years. 15 hours? It'll take them 5 minutes out of their computers. I know it because I've worked with 3 of the departments already on their computers, and they can print almost anything out. It's an exaggeration of numbers to say we can't get it out of these computers. Let me continue. I think it's important enough, and I'm not just looking for 2 years. I'm looking for a 7-year count to establish a trend on this. Where have these numbers been? Where have they gone? And where are they heading? The second item is a similar accounting for the actual base wage and full overtime numbers for each 3-digit warrant item. This also is in those numbers that each department produces for advisory every year. Not for the public. The public has never seen these numbers. We should get these numbers because the number in the warrant is both salary and overtime, but no one tells the voting public at town meeting that that number, say the police, has $400,000 in overtime built into the wage account. We should have 2 lines for that. I went over this on the annual report so we could clearly see what the impact is of base wage and overtime for these different departments. Third item is the grants. I know there are grants all over the place. When I've asked about how come this overtime exceeds the overtime published, oh, we had a grant. Oh, we had a grant. Oh, we had a grant. It's a pat answer. It's not good enough. The question is, the traffic grant the police got, was that a one-time grant? Are we still doing that traffic? Are we still getting paid for it by the state, which is incidentally out of our other pocket and not from foreign aid from China? Let's be very clear on this. What grants have we gotten? Which ones have expired? Are we continuing some at our cost? Have we eliminated them? And the question of the cost of the grant locally, we have to apply for them. We're spending time. Some of them are elaborate and take hours to put together. There's no line item in any account talking about these grants, let alone the number that the school people have. But these should be put together. None of this is foreign aid coming to us. We all know that. Comes out of our pocket, goes to Washington, goes to Boston, and the bureaucrats take their overhead. I'd love to be able to tell the public, and I know it won't happen in my lifetime, we'll tax locally for the Chapter 98. So we get 100% of the dollars that we're paying for that, and we spend 100% of it locally. We're getting what, 40 cents on the dollar? Let's go to the feds and their educational grants. Same thing, 40 cents on the dollar. Let's tax it locally, get 100% out of it. The tax rate could be lower for everyone in town, but that's neither here nor there. We should be able to get these numbers for at least 5 to 7 years past to see what the trend has been in each of these three accounts. And we should have these as soon as possible. My wife is an IT specialist. She runs numbers on our company like nothing flat. I'm an IT idiot. I don't even use the web that you sent me to for the annual report. For me to get on the web, forget it. My wife stands next to me. But I'm saying, IT people can crank these things out very easily. Randy has cranked these things out for me in the past. He picks up the phone and gets the next room. And in about 5 minutes, I have a sheet with all the overtime for that department. Computers can do just about anything. You just have to know how to get the stuff out. If you don't, then we have the wrong people. And that brings up a whole new ballgame again. I was particularly inspired by Bob Hickey's column last week. I'm sure you were. You must have laughed a few times, especially when he mentioned the plowing that Aubuchon sold beautiful snow, shovels. You know, why shovel sidewalks when they sell these beautiful shovels? Why do we pay for this? In cities, the sidewalk in front of the apartment house, even though it's city land, is cleaned by the party abutting that property, and this is an issue. But he also pointed out two other issues. One was the privatization, and the second was, in quotes, heavy, no new taxes. I was also inspired last week looking over the school budget, and I'd just like to highlight one thing to you, which I think can be important in our deliberations with the unions. They use a term known as substitutes. Think about it. Teacher substitutes, nurse substitutes, guidance substitutes, maintenance custodial substitutes. No OT, straight time. Think about this for some of the departments where we have the heaviest OT accounts. I realize the big complaint will be these people don't know what they're doing. A cop from Mansfield has the same training as a cop from Foxborough. That person can be hired as a 20-hour part-time employee instead of paying time and a half. The contract allows it. The contract talks about career personnel, who we know are. So the question is, instead of just simple privatization, we have the plows, we have the trucks, bring in the employees from construction sites that are closed down, put them in these trucks and what have you. This is what Bob Hickey was suggesting, the privatization of a lot of these activities which can be done. We should think about it. We should begin to push it because this overtime account stinks. The last two items, very quick. And what happens when the lockout predicted by the sport analysts occur? Are you doing any planning?
If the lockout occurs
We're in trouble.
for a year, the town will be in serious financial trouble.
Yep.
But Kevin,
In answer to the question, are we planning, we've just finished getting the budget written, so having an opportunity to plan for the loss of $2 million, we haven't had that opportunity yet. In terms of realistically, will we start that plan? I would say honestly no, because the effect, if that were to occur, is so catastrophic that we would be in full-blown emergency mode. And frankly, the only solution would be to either liquidate the available money that we would have, which would leave us essentially penniless, or engage in widespread, large-scale layoffs. So the choice is very clear. It doesn't require a lot of planning. Frankly, no one should have any hope, if that occurs, that there's going to be an easy way to balance the budget, and therefore there's a simple plan we can package up, put on the shelf, and wait to execute. It's basically, for all intents and purposes, viscerally denuding the whole town government, frankly. That's the plan.
It's a good answer.
Yeah.
I agree, but the issue is more acute. It's a circumstance that will hit only Foxborough. We're isolated because of that stadium in our midst. When they're working, we're in great shape. When they're not working, we're at the bottom of the list, and we are in serious trouble. I hope you consider at least looking a little at it, because if it does hit, we got serious. The last item, I'm concerned. In closing, we continue to be told that any reduction will cost jobs. You just mentioned it, and I can understand it and agree with it. My concern is, whatever happened to the Hoffas and the John L. Lewises walking hand in hand with their members in Union Square, New York, chanting, "Solidarity forever, solidarity forever." What I'm getting at is, we are told by department heads that the members do not care about the layoffs of their fellow members, only their increase. This is the implication that we have gotten as taxpayers. If there's any change in the steps, you're going to have to lay off. We're not going to take the cuts. These are their fellow workers, their fellow neighbors. I just don't understand it. And I thank you.
Thanks, Dick. So do we have Sergeant Noonan?
Well, that's probably a great segue to discuss a labor contract.
I figured as much.
Yeah. I thought the union would be here, and I don't quite know why they're not, because this is an opportunity to actually give a little bit of good news, news that I hope.
I heard I'd be here, that's why.
So I'll just publicly announce what the contract parameters are and make my notes of gratitude to the bargaining unit. And then the board already is aware of these things and can make whatever comments it wants. But basically what we did with the police union is we concluded a 2-year contract. The provisions are fairly simple. For the current fiscal year, it is a 0% cost of living adjustment. And for next year, it is a 3% cost of living adjustment. Now, where those two numbers came from on the COLA is there were a number of other bargaining units that had multi-year contracts that expired this year that received a 3-year COLA. Those were concluded in a prior time, 2 or 3 years ago, when the economy was much better and those raises were granted. Consequently, the board adopted a parameter which was if a contract for a union expired on June 30th of this year, that they would get reciprocity compared to the other unions whose contracts were in place this year, and for them that meant a 3%. The ones that had a contract this year get a 3%. So what we said to the two bargaining units that didn't, police and DPW, for this year it'll be a 0, and next year you'll get a 3. Unions that had a 3% this year, next year will be bargaining a 0. So this is the first contract that's been settled under that parameter. And it does indeed provide for a 0% COLA this year and a 3% next year. It also provides for some language changes that are, I would characterize as minor in nature, and some changes to the employee health care plan, specifically increasing office visit copays from $5 to $15, which is a much more contemporary standard than the $5, which has pretty much disappeared. Now, we have to bargain those copay changes with the other bargaining units, of course, but the sum total effect, were we to be successful, would be a $200,000 savings to the town, and that's part of the budget closure plan that we've talked about. that I briefed the board on last week in school committee and the public. I am very hopeful that that'll be achieved. The important thing to note is that I think some credit is due to the police bargaining unit because they have clearly, by agreeing to this contract, indicated that they get it. They understand that the town is facing difficult financial circumstances in agreeing to a 0% COLA this year, in agreeing to changes in co-pays in their health insurance. You know, they're saying back to us, look, we're willing to take some pain, we're willing to share some of the burden. Maybe those changes don't go as far as some people would like. And other people, I'm sure, probably in the bargaining unit felt perhaps they went too far. But I will say that when we do collective bargaining, we do it in what I call a realistic world. If we don't achieve consensus locally, then that process goes outside the town to mediators and arbitrators and people who don't live or work in this town, don't pay taxes here, and frankly have a very different standard of what they think is fair. And so very often what they think is fair would not meet what the average taxpayer would say is fair, that's for sure. So when we're able to accomplish a contract like this, and we have a bargaining unit like the police who have clearly indicated that, you know, they're trying to understand the town's difficulty, they're willing to partner with us, I think that's noteworthy, and I think it's something we should be grateful for. And I wanted to, in telling the board about that publicly, express to the taxpayers a thought that if people think that we have employees, unionized employees, that don't get it, don't understand, here's proof that they get it. And like I say, maybe some would prefer it went further. But we deal in a real world in bargaining, not an abstract one that people would like to see. We deal in a real world. And this is a significant indication of cooperation from the police union, and I'm very very pleased and very proud of them for doing this. And I wish they were here so we could say thank you to them in person. I don't know what the mix-up was, but I think this is a terrific deal for both parties. Town meeting will ultimately decide if they like this or not because they'll be asked to fund it or not.
Right.
Linda, could I just,
Yes.
Kevin, last year, before you came, we had some debate at the board level. As you know, we have a huge unfunded liability for health care for those who retire, and we have a huge unfunded pension liability for those who retire. And in the real world, as you describe, most companies do not provide retiree health care anymore, and most companies don't have a pension plan. Now they have a 401k, exactly. All right. In the airline industry a number of years ago, they faced the reality of unions and non-unions, and they said, if we're going to change the rules, we need to change them from this point going forward and not necessarily impact. And so we had talked about, at some point, changing the employment structure so that those hired after a certain date would not qualify for all the benefits that those currently get today. But we didn't get very far in that dialogue. So not to get into a debate on that tonight, but I'd like to ask you to give some thought to that so that as we go into future collective bargaining and we go through future strategies that we get your thoughts and ideas, because when I look at $60 million of unfunded health care liability on a $55 million budget, when I look at the cost of the unfunded health care, when you look at Wisconsin and Ohio and California and New Jersey, they're all struggling with it. And it's a matter of not that people aren't entitled to everything, but there are only so many dollars. And so making sure that those commitments we've made to date are honored is very important to me. But I also think that we have to look at making changes going forward so that the new commitment for those that get hired is honored as well. Otherwise, what's going to happen is we're going to, sometime down the road, as they're seeing across the world, but in the United States in particular, the funding is going to become a real problem. So if you would just give that some thought and at some point come back to the board with your thoughts on that.
Sure. And Larry had sent me a Mass Taxpayers Foundation report that was just issued a few days ago. It was actually issued last week while I was away, and I forwarded it on to the board. They make the point that retiree health insurance has pretty much disappeared every place in the world except in the public sector. One of the issues they're fighting about out in Wisconsin right now. And the point they make is that Massachusetts absolutely cannot afford the current liability for current retirees for health insurance. The fact that we provide a 50-50 benefit, and in some towns they provide better than 50-50. When you think about paying 50% of a retired municipal employee's health insurance for the rest of his or her life, and in many cases surviving spouses as well, and you add the number up, it's an impossible burden to bear. For this town right now, it's $60 million unfunded. There is no money set aside for it. What MTF is saying with this report is that Massachusetts cities and towns cannot possibly afford this liability. And so I think it harkens to what you're saying, Larry. I don't like the notion of breaking promises to people who we have made promises of these benefits to, and I know that's what you're saying as well. But I do think we have to realistically look at what we're able to afford to do going forward. And I don't think we can afford to do, I don't think we can afford quite the largesse that we've been engaging in. It's, I will tell you, the short answer to your question is this. Some of those things you can bargain and some of those things you can't. Retiree health insurance, for instance, you can't bargain because retirees don't have bargaining rights. It's a simple decision. Town meeting decides if they're going to offer retiree health insurance or not, and if they decide to offer it, it must be offered at a minimum 50%. If they decide not to offer it anymore, there is no way you can grandfather existing employees under current Massachusetts law. There is some discussion at the State House to create a grandfathering so that you can change that benefit moving forward without affecting prior retirees. Because one of the things that happens every time somebody suggests changing it is there's a hue and cry, oh my goodness, people have planned all their careers to get this benefit. And that's a fair statement.
Absolutely.
True,
Absolutely.
But I think the MTF report makes the point. The legislature has got to look realistically at this area of benefits, and they've got to react to it because we absolutely cannot afford it. We can't do it. So I hope they will. And with respect to other benefits that we can control in bargaining, yes, I'll very definitely take a look at that and get back to the board, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, moving on to action items. We have the minutes from January 11th, 25th, and the 8th. Larry, you weren't here, so we didn't approve.
The 11th and 25th, I was okay with.
So,
The 11th and the 8th, and the January 25th, I had no comments on as well.
You know, Linda, I apologize. Since we didn't get our packages on time, I haven't had a chance to look at the minutes. So would you guys mind waiting another week on the
no,
meeting?
that's fine.
Thank you.
That's fine.
And I apologize for being late.
Rain's not here either, so, I don't really like to approve if everybody has a
Thank you.
2 cents.
And again, my apologies for being late. I had the joy of getting to work late and rushing here.
Well, you made it here safely, that's all that matters.
Barely.
So, oh no. So why don't we put the, table the minutes for the meetings until Lorraine can be with us, Kevin? Is that all right?
All right.
Okay. And we have the Labor Council invoice for, Labor Council for December 16th to January 31st.
Kevin, you've reviewed this in detail, and you're satisfied that the hours are reasonable?
Yeah, the hours are reasonable. I'm not satisfied that we continue to spend a substantial amount of Labor Council time on the Board of Health issue, but it is what it is. I'm hoping it's getting close to resolution, and I actually have a briefing for you in executive session.
Okay.
So I'm not happy about that, but on the other hand, the hours were spent, yep.
I think that's really the big comment I had on this is,
Yeah.
I mean, the Board of Health over the last 6-7 months, they're up to $29,000 on legal, which is 75% of the total cost that we've spent And I know we've talked about this back and forth, but it's got to end, and it's got to be addressed one way or the other, because it just keeps going on and on.
Motion, you ready for a motion, Linda?
Yeah.
Motion to approve Labor Council's invoice?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the next is town council for the retainer for February.
I'll make a motion to approve the retainer for $4,083.33 for the February retainer.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the next is town council invoice for services for January 2011. It all has all the backup to it. Does anybody have any discussion?
Again, Kevin, you're comfortable with the hours charged?
Yes.
I move to approve the invoice for January services.
I'll second that motion.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And next, we have a grant award for the automated license plate reader.
Kevin, can you just give the public a brief 1-minute overview of what this automated license plate reader actually is or does?
Sure. It's, and I'll give you the, like Dick, I'm not exactly an electronic wizard, but it enables the officer and their cruiser to read a license plate electronically and then run the plate. You heard the term run the plate, and then run the plate, which makes things very efficient and very fast. And it's a huge advantage versus manually looking at the plate and typing it in and all that sort of thing. So great little tool to have, that's for sure. And there may be other advantages to it as well. That's my kind of simplistic version.
It would go in every cruiser?
I'm not sure if we have enough of these to put in every cruiser or if this is a pilot. I'm not sure. I'd have to check on that. So I'll check with the chief. I'm actually meeting with him day after tomorrow for a couple of things. And if I find there's more to this than what I just reported, I'll get back to you next week and give you more information.
It's simply a scanner like you see in the supermarket, pointed towards the license, it broadcasts back to the station, you get the answer right back.
Yeah, I remember, this came across when I was on the advisory committee, and I think it was discussed in length, because it's an impressive piece of technology. It's on the car as you're driving, you can see the other car coming, so it's not a handheld, and it's almost instantaneous. There was a concern about the kind of big brother mentality where, you're driving by a hotel and you can see who's staying at the hotel, just out of curiosity. So I think we vetted that process with the police chief, and there was going to be training and kind of safeguards on that. But
The real advantage to it, by reading plates that quickly and in processing them, you're able to see if there's warrants issued. Whereas a police officer driving and trying to type a plate in, that would be, it doesn't work. So this is going to give the officer the ability to patrol, move quickly, read plates. It's just a huge advantage. And by the way, that was a pretty good explanation for a non-technical guy.
It's a non-technical answer.
The other thing, Jim, that I think is important for people to know at home is that Officers Fiscaldo and Hodson worked with the chief. Dick, you're right that this is money out of our other pocket because it's coming out of the state. But that money's being spent with somebody. And I want to credit both the chief and the two officers for doing the legwork and putting the time in to try to make sure that some of that money that's going to the state comes back to Foxborough. And it looks like, in talking to the chief, that they put a lot of work into filing the grant. And in fact, to win $18,945 is quite a credit. So I want to acknowledge that and thank them.
I'll relay that.
So I would move to accept the grant award of $18,945 from the state to fund the automated license plate reader technology.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Just to add a
Dick?
comment to this. The only thing I haven't heard is what is the long-term maintenance cost on this? Is this built into the grant award, that we understand that there are steps that we need to take And as Larry implied, it took a great deal of time to get this application approved. How much time did it cost us to get the application approved? Was it $2,000, $5,000, plus an annual maintenance cost of $4,000? The 18 is only a penny ante probably. You don't have any answers?
I don't, no.
No. And we have a resignation from the alternate member of the Zoning of Appeals, Chris Carvenin. His work is,
His travel and work schedule prohibit him.
yeah, so I'd entertain a motion to accept his resignation.
I'd move to accept his resignation with gratitude.
Second?
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
So do we fill that appointment? Do we have any?
Zoning board, yes.
Is
They
there-
come in front of us, so I guess, Frank, if you wanted to put it in the paper that we're looking for an alternate on the zoning board of appeals, and then Kevin will take the applications.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I assume we don't have any on file.
We can see if there's any on file. There may be.
Presumably no, but
Well, there was a couple people that had,
arm wrestling
come
for it.
in, yes, come in front of us, so,
Do you do interviews, or?
yes,
Okay.
yep. I mean, we did for that.
We actually have a policy, which was updated about a year ago on filling positions like this in the interview
Great.
process. et cetera.
Something I can read and guide me
Yeah.
between that and Sandy, we'll be in good shape.
So is there anything else, Kevin, that you needed to add on, or should we move to go into, yeah, Dick?
Since I brought up some things earlier, I'm wondering if I could get some answers. The annual report issue. It's 5 months in the works. I haven't heard a thing. Are we just rubber stamping last year's annual report, or are we updating it to meet the zoning, to meet the bylaw?
Just a cautionary note for the board, you cannot discuss items that are not on your
I
agenda.
know, and that's what I wanted to say to you earlier, Dick, is, we've always had new and old business, you know that, you've come to our meetings for years.
I don't have it now.
Well, the problem is that because we attended the open meeting law, and things have changed. The Attorney General's office has changed things so that you can't discuss things that aren't on the agenda. So we have to be careful not to just bring up something haphazardly. If someone comes, even you bringing up all these different issues this evening, we can't talk to you about them because they weren't on the agenda, so it doesn't invite the public to be here to hear what you have to say and to get involved with it, too.
Point of order, though. The issue has been before the board. When can one anticipate an answer? Never? That's what the agenda issue
No.
seems to imply.
No. Well,
Just generally speaking, when you brought that up, I think we had a formal vote, and I think it was 4 in favor of taking that one item and putting it on our goals and objectives. Again, and there was 1 against it. So it is on the goals and objectives. If you've looked at the goals and objectives, it's probably about 2 pages right now. We spent a lot of time prior to Kevin coming on board, and this was started last year. And it's moved into a form where there's a matrix, and we've prioritized it, and it's on there. But unfortunately, it's on there with 10 other things right now, or 15 other things.
The point I'm trying to raise with the committee is, it's a bylaw that is not being met. And somehow you're in the position of printing a new one. It's been in front of you since Thanksgiving, and we haven't heard a word on what is happening to meet the bylaw. And that concerns me. Why are we spending $6,000 to print something that's not meeting the bylaw?
Could I just make a suggestion then, Dick? I would like to suggest that the chairperson, the town manager, and yourself review the items you've talked about tonight, and they'll fit them into the agenda as appropriate. Linda and Kevin set the agenda, not the rest of the board. Rather than take the public's time tonight, why don't the 3 of you get together and try to because if it's on the agenda, we can discuss it, we can have the back and forth, people have an opportunity. So would that be all right with you, Linda?
That's fine.
And is that all right with you, Kevin?
Yeah, the other items I brought up, which I won't bring up what they were,
Right.
can I have the authority to meet with Kevin tomorrow and go over those items we discussed?
No, the board doesn't set my schedule, with all due respect, and I'm booked solid for the next couple of days. But you can you can call the office, Dick, talk to Sandy, and she will set a time up. I mean, everybody who requests time gets it, but I can't say that I'm going to give it priority, with what else is going on right now with the priorities that this board has set for me. I will say, the town report is about to go to print. So if this requires a bylaw change or something like that, I'm not optimistic that anything's going to change. And I want to be honest about that because I don't want Dick to have a unfair expectation of something happening. But we've already crossed the line in having even this much of a discussion. And right now we have just basically committed an open meeting law violation. So we can't really do this anymore. But I would be happy to meet with Dick, with the chair, and go over this and agendarize these things. So if the board wishes to make decisions, you can do it. And if other members of the public want to weigh in on the issue, they've got an opportunity to do it too.
Right.
And just a reminder for the board, the annual report that Larry had done up, I had sent it out to everybody. Did everybody get a chance to look at it? And if you have corrections or whatever, the exception of your name spelling.
Thanks. I've answered to worse.
Yeah. Just make sure you get them back to Sandra or Chris so that they can take care of that, so that we're all set with that. And I believe that's it, and I would entertain.
Linda, Randy was on vacation, but there was a blank for a number, and I wanted to make sure it got to Randy to be filled in. So that it didn't get printed with an XX when there was supposed to be a number in there. In the Linda's report, yes.
I'll
Right.
talk to Sandy.
Right. I talked to Sandy last week. She said he's on vacation. So I just want to make sure it doesn't go to
That's
print and
right.
someone missed that there's an XX. I just want to make sure we had the right number. That's why I put a blank there.
Okay.
And, Madam Chairman, the reasons for going into executive session, we've listed peremptorily a number of topics which we won't need tonight. So the only ones you need are strategy for real property negotiations and litigation. I have an update for you on a piece of litigation. So it'll be those two subjects.
So I'd entertain a motion.
Now, Kevin, litigation wasn't on the agenda.
That's okay, as long as we publicly report the subjects. It does not have to be listed. You have to list the executive session. You don't have to list the topics, but you do have to verbally report them to the public.
So I'll make a motion, we enter into executive session to discuss strategy for real property negotiations as well as litigation, and then to exit therefrom solely for the purpose of adjourning thereafter.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call. Paul?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
And Jill votes yes. Thank you.
I think we probably need a recess for a few minutes.